All right, guys, this is going to be the first video in what will probably end up being a series, who knows how long, on something that we call realism. So when it comes down to playing these games with other people, like with your kids or with friends that you might have, like when you were school age or things like that, a lot of people will ask, why are you playing these kind of silly, kind of funky looking games, right? Why are we playing these games with dice? Why do we play games with cards? Why do we care about this so much? Why are we not going around playing arcade games? Why are we not playing computer games that may be a little bit better known? When it comes down to that, the real answer to the question has to do with realism. But the tricky part about this is figuring out exactly what we mean by realism, right? So I'm going to tell you right now that it doesn't matter what game you play. If you're playing a game that has an honest game engine, and yes, I am insinuating something about a certain card and dice game that has a computer version that introduces rerolls to make the right thing happen, right? If you're playing it honestly and you're not rerolling because you don't want Roger Maris to hit home run 62 or whatever it is, if you're playing it like the right way, it should be possible for like a whole breadth of results to take place, right? So you get crazy stuff like the Pirates winning 10 straight to start off the season in 1949. You're like, whoa, is there a problem with the game or not? Who knows? In the old days on the old Diamond Mine Baseball Forum, before the dark times, before Dane Myers came and screwed everything up, back in the good old days, people would say this is unrealistic and that is unrealistic, and the posters that we had who were knowledgeable about statistics would show that, well, it kind of is within the idea of, within the realm of statistical accuracy. And look, if you replay the season like 100 times automatically, you'll see that in the end, you will get like the results that are right on, including for like all the players, as well as for the league and so on and so forth. What you have is just a sample that may be a little bit off. Now, that's one kind of realism, right? Having this like knowledge that, oh yeah, if I were to actually like do this scientific experiment or whatever with the game, like the stats would come out right. But is that really what we're talking about when it comes to realism? I mean, this is a really, really important question, and this is something to really kind of consider. When I first started playing APBA, I was 7 years old. My dad introduced me to the game because he was playing in a male league. I think I've said this before, I'll say it again. If you were part of the Big Red APBA League in like 1991, my apologies because I might have managed your team. And yeah, anyway, won't say anything more about that. But when my dad introduced this game to me, one of the reasons why he told me that APBA was great is because it was realistic. It was realistic in the sense that players more or less did in the game what they would do in real life, and also teams would perform pretty much in the game the way that they performed in real life. So if you had a team that was like really lousy, like he would always talk about the 1941 Philadelphia Phillies, I think it was, right? I mean, if you have this team that's just awful, they're going to be awful in game, right? A team that was bad in real life will be bad in the game when you play with them. For me, that would be like the 1949 Washington Senators, as you've seen, right? They're a really, really bad team, and they're going to play really poorly, like no matter what you do, right? That is part of realism, right? If you look back at how J. Richard Seitz made pitching grades for APBA, he made them in part based on ERA and really also in part based on won-loss records. And it's also true that fielding for teams that were winning teams was much better than it was for losing teams. This is, yes, in part to try to sort of make a fielding system that's kind of sort of like real life, but it also very much was in part because he knew that people were going to replay the season, and what they cared about the most was whether the right team won or not, right? That is also part of realism. And then there's another part of realism, which is sort of the game that goes on inside our head. So I'm going to show you something here. We're going to go over here to the screen. My face becomes really small there, and this should look familiar. We were talking about this just the other day, right? This is the APBA brochure from 1962, 63 probably, or like really late 62. Right, and we can talk about here, APBA players all but breathe, and they give you what? The best performances, the lowest run averages, and so on and so forth, right? It doesn't say necessarily, it even says here, no batter hits every pitcher for the same average. He says spoiler with some and the fattens up on others. And you'll notice, too, as you read through it, it's not guaranteed that you're going to have players play exactly the same way in APBA that you would have them play in real life, but they will play realistically. they'll have the same abilities they display in actual major league competition, right? And so that's part of the thing that will get you on and get you excited about playing these games. But, it's not just all about the statistics, right? Part of it also is that realistic game that happens in our head, right? This is where we talk about, let's see here. I'm sorry, that was sort of the opposite of what I was about to say with stolen bases. Well, we're talking about things like, in-game strategy. When we're talking about things like, and I'm not sure if this advertisement even really talks about that, actually, but it's fine. We talk about things like in-game strategy. We talk about things like, trying to figure out, would you bunt in this situation or not? Do you steal a base in this situation or do you not steal a base? Things like that. That's a completely different type of realism and accuracy. And it's also important, right? I love it when I play one of these games. I'm playing in like 1949 and I've got to make a decision. Okay, so this guy who's coming up to bat now is got a little bit of power, has not been hitting for average lately. We got runners in scoring position in a really tight game. Do I bunt with him? Do I swing away? Do I wait to see if he gets a walk? Do I take a couple pitches and then decide what to do? Right? That's the sort of thing that I absolutely love because that's a very, very real life situation. And part of me says that even if the right thing doesn't happen, like even if, I don't know, Ralph Branca the other day hit a home run, right? He had no home runs in 1949 in real life. He hit one in Diamond Mine baseball. It doesn't matter to me so much that he hit one in the game, right? What matters is more than that in terms of realism is how deep into this am I getting? Do I feel like I'm actually playing a game or do I feel like I'm just sort of shuffling around a couple cards, right? Does this feel like I'm playing through a baseball game and I'm managing one or am I just creating a box score, right? And that's sort of the thing, again, when we look back at this advertisement again, I think that's the thing that Sites is trying to get to here when we're talking about, realism. The important managerial decisions are yours, but yeah, you can't bunt with like the bases empty and all of those little things, though that did later on become part of APBA. The thing about this that's most important, though, is figuring out a way to make it so that when you're playing this game, you can really, really get deep into it and you feel like you're actually managing a team, not just creating a box score. And that, for me, is really the most important part of playing out the games and of getting stuff put together. Look, I mean, with just about any of these games, especially these computer games, we can turn on autoplay and have the computer play through all the games, and then we can look at the results and feel something, right? But that's not really playing the game. You're not really getting into it. That's the reason why we play through the games, and that's the reason why we stress realism so much, because we want to be part of the experience, and we want to really, really have a feel for what was happening and for what things may have felt like in real life, right? That's the thing that's the most important part. Now, I know that we could do this with any game, right? Theoretically, right? We could go play MLB The Show. I'd probably get more YouTube views if I was playing that one, right? We could go play that game and make sure that we hit the trigger button or whatever just at the right time so that we get a base hit and we can look and wow ourselves as we take a team that's not so good and make all the hitters really good and do all this other stuff. We could even probably modify the game, play with older teams or do whatever. I don't know. It's been years since I've played games like that, right? But the thing that makes it realistic in that sense is how deep into it you can get, right? Can you get into it and really feel like you're playing an older game, like, say, you're playing a game in the 1930s or the 1910s or 1908 or whatever? Or does it feel like it's a little bit convoluted and it's I don't know, it's kind of fakey and it feels plastic and stuff like that? We're going to get to this a little bit more later on, too, when we start messing around with OOTP. OOTP is an example of having a lot of stuff that's very immersive, but also a lot of stuff that unfortunately is immersion breaking. 22 years ago, I believe it was, I bought a game called what was it? High Heat Baseball, I think it was. I think that was the one that had Sammy Sosa on the cover. I can't remember. It's been a long time. It was an old PC game, and it was pretty cool. You could play with it, and I mean, it was 3D, right, which is pretty neat. And you could get these modifications that would let you play with old teams and old ballparks and stuff. And it was all right, but the old ballparks would all be kind of gimmicky, right? I remember playing in the Polo Grounds and the score would always be ratcheted up and stuff like that because it had to play it had really, really short porches. And so you could pull the ball on everybody and hit home runs left and right. I mean, that's okay, but it really kind of breaks the immersion, right? to really play in the polo grounds, you have to know that sometimes, yeah, you would have games like that. Sometimes you'd have games where nobody would score at all. Remember, this is where Christy Mathewson pitched, right? And there were short porches back then too, right? That's the thing about it. We want to get really into what the old eras were actually like, and not just have like some visual representation on screen that, kind of gets us there, but doesn't really. Anyway, there you go. There's a couple of my thoughts on realism for today. Let me know what you think. I have more thoughts on the subject, and I'm sure that they will come up as we move along. I'll talk to you later. Bye.